Well, to this now, the National Taxi Alliance has partnered with the Transport Education Training Authority to roll out a nationwide Ndlelanhle road passenger service campaign. Now, this critical campaign aims to directly improve passenger service, safety and operational standards within the taxi sector. Let's chat about this now with National Taxi Alliance spokesperson Theo Malele. Thank you so much for your time today. Let's talk a little bit about the campaign. What is the purpose of the campaign, especially during Transport Month, and how are you bringing in passengers to be a part of this?
Good afternoon, and thanks for the opportunity. Well, this initiative, in collaboration with the Transport Education Training Authority, has been brought about as part of our self-regulation as an industry. So the National Taxi Alliance is actually going out there to ensure that it actually shares vital information with drivers, passengers, and the public in general, to ensure that the state of the relations that we have currently in the country gets improved. The taxi industry has been tarnished for all the wrong, perhaps even the right reasons. So we're trying to redeem that and also ensure that the message permeates through to our drivers, to ensure that vehicles that they use are of sound standard, and they also communicate well with the passengers, being that the passengers are key in this business.
Certainly. And I think from your side, you speak about, changing the industry. What would you consider to be the most urgent challenge that has been facing the taxi industry, specifically as well, that relationship between passengers?
I think it's more on the behavioral side. But this, cuts across, because you would also have the passengers who would, for some strange reason, maybe wake up late and insist that the drivers, speed up because they need to catch up with time. And we also want to send a message to them not to always be in a hurry, but all to budget sufficient time, and equally so to the drivers not to speed. But we also call on government to bring about the subsidization of the taxi industry, in order that the passengers could have a choice of the mode that they need to utilize on a particular route along a particular corridor, on a particular day, rather. So if we can get a subsidy, then we can be competitive with all other public transport operators, being the majority public transport operator who's been sidelined for rather too long by government. So if playing fields were to be equaled, then we should also be a competitive industry and ensure that at all given times we provide well-standard services. Yes, we're far away from that, but we are in one step in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think the biggest, concern as well has been the kind of crime and threats that are either surrounding the taxi industry or are in fact even within the taxi industry. Let's just take, a look at the few weeks back when we saw that criminality playing out at Maponya Mall. You and I would have spoken quite a lot during that operation where that e-hailing driver was attacked, that being blamed on taxi operators. There was also just a few weeks later that daylight shooting that took place of taxi boss Ndate Tami Moya. These kind of criminal elements, I can imagine, is a very difficult thing to deal with within the taxi industry. But talk to us about how it has impacted operations, not just for communities, but also taxi operators themselves.
Look, but I think we need to separate the issues. The incident at Maponya Mall, it is an allegation that still needs to be proved as to whether it is the taxi industry that is involved. But from the look of things, it is not in the character of the taxi industry, and there are quite a number of other questions that still need to be answered. There hasn't been any person that came out to claim that indeed that is their vehicle. Neither has there been a company that would have come out to say that indeed that is a vehicle belonging to their operation. So that incident still needs thorough investigations for us to be clear on this one. And with regards to the slaying of our chairperson, that too, we're not sure as to whether it's a taxi industry related or what could be the problem. We rely solely and wholly on the authorities to help us, unpack and unearth, this faceless people so that we can, put our fingers on the right pulse. So currently we cannot, begin to speculate lest we actually jeopardize the investigative processes.
But, and I think that's very right in regards to those two separate matters in those cases. But let's talk holistically then in regards to some of the threats that are made, whether it be criminal. And I'm speaking, of course, not just to communities in terms of the taxi operating space. I'm even talking about your drivers themselves. Oftentimes we know about, the contestation for routes. We know about sometimes the threats that happen to other various associations. How are we working to clamp down on that? And I think it is really a crisis sometimes when you look at just how intense these fights can be.
No, it's true. But we also need to equate this to the lack of responsibility from the municipality side in doing their actual transport plans. Should that be done, then we would know even what the demand patterns would be along the particular corridors. But currently that is not the case. And we need to have an element of education also coming into the taxi industry to learn more about supply and demand, because currently that is not the case. It is just an overflooding of the industry, and the routes get saturated and people end up not making sufficient money, and that then changes the moods within operators that have financial obligations to look after their businesses. So it then brings in that element of criminality for people who would then want to step onto other people's routes in order to try and make extra money to meet their financial obligations. So we really need to have a concerted effort for which I think in the Gauteng province we are moving in the right direction, with the appetite that's been shown by the MEC of Transport, Ndlelanhle. I think she's doing a pretty job by bringing all stakeholders together and working with them to try and find solutions. So if this whole thing can be done in other provinces, because if you look at it, there are provinces that are operating as if they are not part of South Africa. You look at the Northwest. At the Northwest, the MEC of Transport behaves like a demigod. You go to the Free State. The Free State, there is too much of, what do you call this? Favoritism. Santago has been favored over NTA. You go to the Northwest Cape, you face the same problem. So I think there needs to be a serious appetite from the political leadership in order to correct this trajectory and move this narrative in a positive direction.
And I think as well, talk to us a little bit as well about that relationship between municipalities as well as government. Do you think that they have been effective enough, perhaps, in enforcing certain regulations, specifically when it comes to licensing vehicle permits as well?
I really don't think so, because even when you look at the infrastructure, the infrastructure that we operate on the roads, they've got potholes. The markings on the roads is very poor. Even when there's been repainting of some of these roads, but that paint is of inferior quality. It does not even reflect at night. And there's defacing signages along the roads. So there is a lot of work that still needs to be done for us to really then begin to appreciate what the political leadership is doing. Not all these politicians are doing what is expected of them, but I can vouch that the minister, Barbara Creecy, and a deputy have shown that they want to come in and move differently from their predecessors. And you would see that even in Gauteng province, Ndlelanhle, from a predecessor, Jacob Mamabolo, who started this in a positive direction, she's also taken the baton and started moving along the same path that Mamabolo had initiated. So then there is a directive to show that these politicians are really willing and prepared to drive change within the communities that they serve. It leaves a lot to be desired with people like in the Northwest. The MEC, he behaves like a demigod. Sometimes he can be seen, sometimes he cannot be seen. He actually prescribes for people where to belong. And there is also this narrative that there is an apex body that is representing the taxi industry. And that is a fallacy. That's far from the truth. There is no one particular association that is there in law to represent the taxi industry. So the National Taxi Alliance, equally so with Santaco, are two key bodies in the countries, and they must be respected for their diversity, and they represent the wishes and aspirations of the taxi industry in total.
Yeah. And very quickly, Ndate Theo, it's October, it's Transport Month. What kind of message would you like to amplify to your passengers, but also to those that you share the roads with?
Well, to our passengers, we'd like to wish them and encourage them to try and budget sufficient time, as I said earlier on, and not to bring in too much parcels. And onto the driver's side, let the drivers also communicate well with the passengers. And we'd also like to, before I forget, that when passengers are actually ill-treated or mistreated, they must actually report these incidences, because without them making us aware, there can never be corrective actions. So we have a toll-free number, which is 0800 113322. So we encourage people to do exactly that. Call us, tell us the date of the incident, a brief description of that incident, and then we will do the rest.
Well, thank you so much for that. That is, of course, National Taxi Alliance spokesperson Theo Malele talking to us about the NTA's plans.